Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining me. We are here today with the effervescent actor, James Dreyfus, a wonderful comedian who's got movies, TV, and all sorts of other things under his belt, and recently has found himself in the public eye because of his very strong stance on the transgender issue. So I am going to bring James in, and we are going to have a chat about all of it. Hello, how are you?
Yeah, I'm fine, thanks. How are you?
I'm very well. Thanks for agreeing to come on. I have been looking forward to talking to you for quite some time.
Yeah, welcome. Absolutely welcome. Sorry, it's midday here. I got out of bed a couple of hours ago.
Right. So, your career has spanned. You have worked with so many amazing people. You've worked with Rowan Atkinson. You've worked with Kathy Burke. You've worked with some incredible actors. You were in Notting Hill. You were actually, if I have to be honest, if Spike was amazing, you, sir, stole every scene that you were in with Hugh Grant. You were so funny. You were so adorable. And you were in a show called Gimme Gimme Gimme,
That's right, yeah.
where you were credited with really bringing a gay character into British living rooms in a real way because the character was gay and not a particularly likable character, and neither was your roommate, who
No.
was played by Kathy Burke. And you said that you got on the wrong side of the gay press for that role. Why was that?
Well, I think because we've been used to seeing over the top sort of camp innuendo,
Hmm.
since the 70s. But I think what the gay press the point was this was an over the top show. If I played it, and he was an actor, so obviously he uses his body and thing, and I didn't think he was camp in the same way.
Hmm.
As There was no innuendo because the one thing that was he was absolutely proud of was the fact that he was gay. So there
Right.
was no shame to it. There was no hiding it. And I think the gay press missed all that.
Right. Well, you know what? It doesn't matter which group you're part of. If you're part of any kind of a minority group, the press that covers that group or that is part of that group is always going to insist that every depiction of a member of that group must be positive, must
Yes,
be wholesome, must
yes,
be, there's like a trope that
yes,
that character has to be a certain type of way. Otherwise, you are embarrassing or harming the entire group. And that's very
yes.
common.
Yes, I think you're absolutely right. I mean I mean, look at the furore at the moment over placing Dharma in the LGBTQ
Right.
section. People
Hmm.
don't like that, but it's a truth. I mean, it seems to me at the moment people don't like facing truths. I mean,
Hmm.
it's the truth. It's not because Dharma was gay. It was that Dharma killed gay men. So of course
Right.
there's going to be lesbian. There's going to be an LGBTQ message about it.
Hmm.
It can't all be positive. There are nefarious and nasty individuals in every single group.
Hmm.
You don't get a free pass just because you put your hand up and you say I'm gay.
Well, it's also incredibly stupid and short sighted to suggest that. I mean, I'm old enough to remember, because you and I are both in Gen X, and so I'm old enough to remember when that story actually happened.
Yes,
And one of the reasons why I couldn't get through Dahmer was because I remember when they wheeled those giant barrels out of his apartment.
yes, of course. Yeah.
And I had a lot of gay roommates at the time.
Mm.
And I remember the chill that went through the gay community. And to say that the existence of a Jeffrey Dahmer did not have an impact on the gay community, where people were saying, "Holy shit, here we are, there's hookup culture, there's whatever." And there's this maniac who never looked like a maniac. He was a good looking guy. He
Yeah,
was quiet. Nobody could have suspected anything
yeah,
about him.
yeah.
And people were frightened. My male friends were extremely frightened when this story came out.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, we had the same over here with Dennis Nielsen.
Hmm.
Uh, you had Gacy. There was Robert
Right.
Berdella. Plenty of these people. The difference was Gacy hunted down runaways.
Correct.
And wasn't killing gay men, but was killing just boys, just young men for kicks, But Nielsen is the closest thing we had to a Dharma. And you're right, it was terrifying, and it was awful because, the gay community already in fear and in hiding over here because of all the, because of the stigmatism and then of course we had the onset of HIV and AIDS, which further. You want to talk about being marginalised? That is. I don't think people today really understand it, or they haven't been taught it properly.
They 100,000,000% do not understand it.
They do not understand what it was
those
like.
of us who experienced it. I had a very good friend who used to say that one of the problems with the millennial generation and Gen Z is that they haven't gone through a generation-changing crisis the way we did.
Yes.
And that it is impossible, and I've grown to be a bit of a tiresome stick in the mud about it, but I can't convey in words what it was like to be in your 20s and burying friends every single weekend.
Yeah.
I lost upwards of 80 to 90% of my friends in the mid to late 80s to the early 90s. And when you're in your 20s, when you should be out having fun, blah, 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 and enjoying yourself, and you're going to funerals because everyone around you is dying, it's impossible to convey the impact that makes on you. And certainly why, when people ask me, for example, why I started advocating for gay marriage so early, you mentioned this in interviews that you did, when gay partners were not allowed in a hospital room. When the family would come in, the family that had thrown the sick man out on his behind and said, never come back, only to reappear to then come in and take everything away from the partner because they had blood rights over that man's property and the partner did not.
That's right.
It's hard to explain a time, and it was in recent memory. This is not ancient history. This was only a few decades ago.
I know. But it's still, even though it was a few decades ago, it's still a generation away from people who weren't there. I mean, we're as close. From then, if you go back from the 80s, 40 years, which is where we are now, to get back to the 80s, you're at the end of the war. So these things, I understand that people might not be able to link how horrible this was because they didn't experience it. But what I'm noticing is a horrendous lack of empathy, or horrendous lack of wanting to understand, or even beginning to understand, or comparing it to anything. Because there really is no comparison in recent times, for us at least.
Not at all. Not at all. And it's interesting, too, because one thing that I'm noticing in the transgender discussion, if you can even call it that, the transgender haranguing, is that I understand when younger people want to take the sting out of a word or an action or something like that and take power over it, for example. But I can tell you, and I heard you say this in an interview, and I was very moved by it because it's so true, because I've heard my gay friends say it too. The use of the word queer, which has become normalized. And for many of us, that word has always been associated with violence, extreme violence, the kind of violence that ends up in possible death. And so I loved what you said, which was, look, if you want to call yourself that, fine, but do not call me that. It's a common courtesy, I think.
It's the same with this, with everything that's going on at the moment. The number of times I've asked people, look, please don't refer to me. You can call yourself that if you wish, but please don't expect me to use the same word, because to me it has different connotations. I find the insistence on calling women, cis women or cis men, to be equally insulting, frankly. you will be, that's what you are, that's what I will call you. I ask you not to call me that.
Mm-hmm.
You may use it for your friends and whoever. You're free to do as you please. And I'm finding this whole thing of your pronouns. What are your pronouns?
Mm-hmm.
It's not really a question. It's a purity test.
Right.
It's not. I don't personally use them. No one I know uses them.
Mm-hmm.
And some people get, in fact, people are pretty lucky when they come across me, because I'm quite calm about it and just say, look, I don't use them. You can use them, and I'll respect the fact that you use them. And if I remember, I will, try and use them as a common courtesy.
Mm-hmm.
But I often forget, because it's very unnatural to call someone, I don't know, they. But what I don't like is this insistence that you will do this and you will do that. I find the whole approach to be incredibly aggressive, incredibly authoritarian, and actually, leave people alone. If I don't wish to be called these things, respect that. I wouldn't go around calling you any derogatory term. I just wouldn't do it. But I know a lot of people now who are beginning to react really quite aggressively back, and that's that's what's escalating this whole thing. Is people are finally having enough. They've had enough of being told what to say, how to say it. If you make a mistake, apologize and move on. I mean, I'm sorry. The onus is not on other people to give you validation, especially if you're a total stranger on the internet. There's no onus on anybody to do to treat anybody like that. You treat people how you wish to be treated. If you're pleasant and agreeable to me, I'll be equally agreeable back. But I find a lot of the I want to make a distinction here between transsexuals and trans rights radical activists.
Right, absolutely.
Very different things. Very different. They're very different things indeed. I've got plenty of transsexual friends, always have had. Going back to when I was a child, we had a transsexual friend who used to come around. So I've never had any issues with it. I grew up in London in the 80s, for goodness sake. So now the TRA, who are TRAs, could be anybody, don't know who they are, but there is this mass of aggressive. I mean, the type of people that send rape and death threats to women daily. These are the people that I am talking about. These are the people that I think the transsexual friends I have are horrified. Are horrified. And they're saying they're making life so much more difficult for us, because people look at that and then automatically assume they're all transsexual, which of course they're not. So I want to just make that distinction. My problem is with the activists and the way they behave. And considering we're now all put under one homogenous umbrella by Stonewall, there's no disassociating yourself from the bad behavior of one group. It's very difficult to extricate yourself and say, actually, there's a big group of us over here that don't agree with sending a woman death and rape threats. In fact, I lost work over signing a letter to the Times because I disagreed. I thought it was abhorrent, and I thought anybody in their right mind would condemn that. Well, I was wrong. I mean, I couldn't have been more wrong.
Why don't you talk about that letter and the offer that you made to Stonewall that cost you a gig with Doctor Who? That was quite something.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't, to be honest with you. I'm not a big Doctor Who fan. I didn't. I mean, the pay wasn't great. I did it because it was the Master, and it was a good part. And for a while, I enjoyed their company. And what I did was I got an old friend of mine called Graham Linehan, who wrote Father Ted, got in contact with me and said, "Look, will you sign this letter condemning death and rape threats against
another
J.K.
one who's
Rowling?"
found himself in the shit."
Yeah, exactly. Yes, in the shit. About J.K. Rowling, and I say, "Well, what's going on?" he said, well, she's written this essay. Will you read the essay? So I read the essay. I read the essay twice. I read it 3 times. And I thought, what? I don't understand. There's nothing hateful in here at all. She's talking about her personal experiences. She even says positive things about transsexuals and that compassion that she has and how difficult it must be. And anyway, so I read it and I thought, of course I'll sign it. And in the meantime, Stonewall were saying, no debate. There's no debate to be had about access to women's changing areas, access to women's sports, access to all the rights that women have fought for and are still fighting for every day. So I thought, yeah, I'll sign a letter asking for a reasonable, come on, Stonewall, at least have a reasonable debate with us. At least sit down and do that. 2 very mild letters, I thought. Well, no, it turned out to be the catalyst for everything. It turned out, that's when I was then called transphobic. Anyone who signed the letter was transphobic. But that word has lost its meaning for me now because
absolutely,
because apparently I'm transphobic by default by being same-sex attracted, by not including others in my dating pool. It's nobody else's damn business who I choose to be attracted to or who I am attracted to. It's nobody's business. When I was a youngster in London clubs, I was an ugly, scrawny, skinny little teenager in these clubs with these big guys. I often went home alone without meeting people. I often did things didn't work out for me, But what I didn't do is stamp off and going, "You're all homophobic" or "You're all, thin-phobic people." It's just a nonsense. This is called life. There's upset and disappointment around every corner. Yes, it's harder for some. Disabled people, I would say, have it much, much, much harder. This is where we are. I just think it's this this entitlement to a shag is beyond any sense at all.
Well, that's one interesting thing too. Is that I have an old friend who came to visit me in 2013, and back then he was saying that he did not believe that the T belonged with the LGB. He said, I see that a lot of the people who are advocating, like you said, the activists, not the actual transgender folk, but the activists, he said they are piggybacking off of what we fought for. They don't belong with us. He said, what I am seeing is a lot of, and this is in California, he lived in California at the time, and he said, what I'm seeing is a lot of middle-aged straight men who are now coming out and sort of celebrating their cross-dressing fetishes and saying that now they belong under the umbrella of LGB when we have only recently managed to assert our rights to live as human beings in society. And in 2013, that was an extremely radical point of view to take. I mean, this was before Bruce Jenner became Caitlyn. That's how long ago this was. And I heard him say that, and quite frankly, I was shocked, and I didn't know what to make of it.
Yeah.
And it turns
2013, do you say?
Yes. And so now it turns out that you see people like my dear friends, Clive Simpson and Dennis Kavanaugh, coming out with a podcast where they make this exact point, and a lot of people are making that point, and a lot of the pushback has come from within the gay community. It's come from women, and what you said before about transphobia, I went through the same journey with the word TERF. I used to put it in my word filter on my channel. I don't care anymore because it has no meaning.
Yeah, it has no meaning.
It used to be, those words are used like a scold's bridle used to be used in the old days. It doesn't work anymore because these words are so overused that they don't mean what the antagonist intends them to mean. It doesn't work, so just drop it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and also the hyperbole is beginning to also be meaningless. The number of times I've written, I've read by influential trans activists, people listen to, They want to put us all in camps. They want to exterminate us.
Right.
And I just think, I write to them and I go, do you realize how irresponsible this is? How dreadful what you're saying is? Nobody, I have come across nobody who even would think that. No one is talking about that. But it's this fear that they want to instill, in these youngsters. And it's working. I mean, this is the frightening thing, is it's working. You just think, I wish an adult would come back into the room. I wish the adults would take control, because at the moment it really seems to me that the tail is wagging the dog, not the other way around.
Well, the thing that was so amazing about your Doctor Who experience was that after you lost the gig, your name was completely erased.
Well, it was. They haven't erased it off the CDs that they still got to sell, but they were erasing it whilst they were producing the CDs. So one copy would come out and my name would be gone, and then the next copy would come out and there would be no photograph. Now, if they picked up the phone to me and said, "Look, we have to talk about something," I would have gone, "Yes, let's talk about it. Tell me what I've done wrong." Well, you signed these letters, you got a bit cheeky with some of our fans on social media. And I said, sorry, do you, then I could have said, sorry, do you mean I defended my position on social media with some of your fans who were calling me the most horrendous things you could imagine? We could have had a conversation about this. But the fact of the matter is they did it clandestinely behind my back.
Right.
And I had to go, 3 months later, I had to do it via my agent, had to get this information. And I just thought to myself, oh, you know what, you're such cowards. These people are such cowards. And still to this day, I ask people to provide one single quote where I've ever expressed any hatred towards trans people. Never. I get angry with TRAs and I, give as good as I get. But I've never expressed hatred towards these people, ever. Even when they say the most diabolical things, because I think we should try and keep this as calm as possible. But I keep hearing this, it's both sides. It's not both sides. I don't know whether you saw this thing that happened on Twitter yesterday. An English vicar had just lost his son, aged 22, I think, and said, I'm so glad he was with us for a time. And because he put in one of his responses to a post something positive about J.K. Rowling, he received the most god-awful deluge of tweets from people saying, well, that's what you get for liking J.K. Rowling.
Right.
Is your son dying? I mean, something's gone wrong somewhere. And it's no coincidence that it was at the start of when social media reared its ugly head.
Well, see,
they're very much connected.
This is the thing. I mean, you and I are old enough that we grew up not only without social media, but without the internet for a substantial period of time. We were allowed to mature and grow as human beings without having this presence. And I honestly think sometimes that this ability that people have been given to attack each other without showing their face, without revealing their real name, without revealing their identity, has done something to the psyche of the human being. To be able to be that cruel and that out of control. For social points. I mean, I was reading something, talking about something that Clive and Dennis talk about quite a great deal, that I've spoken to both of them about, is the unbelievable homophobia that you find now in a lot of these alleged gay advocacy groups. And it's gotten to the point now where you've got these young women, and I hoped that this was an urban legend. I hope that it wasn't true, but apparently it is true, where you've got young women who claim that they identify as gay men going into gay clubs and calling gay men faggots
Yeah,
and
yeah,
calling
yeah, yeah.
themselves faggots. And I'm thinking to myself, the unbelievable amount of hubris that it takes. And again, okay, so you want to take the sting out of that word. Well, did you take a poll?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's, this whole of taking these words back again. I mean, they obviously again, it's from a group of people who think. I mean, personally, I think this is the new sort of teenage trend, isn't it? I mean,
Exactly, it is.
this is we had dressing up, right? We had punk. You could be punk. You could be goth. You could be
Mm-hmm.
new romantic. You could be, but that's what you were. I mean, that's what you were identified with.
Mm-hmm.
You see, we used to identify with people, not identify as people
Mm-hmm.
or as things or things. Identify. I remember the word identify. Well, I identify with him. Adamant. Oh, I'm not dressed like him, and that was your sort of identity. You belong to that group. But now, when you're talking, you take away the word with and you replace it with as. It's sort of that fantasy world of becoming something that you're not.
Mm-hmm.
Is this new rebellion trend? It's the
Mm-hmm.
new thing. I've got it happening in my family as well, and it's doing untold damage
Mm-hmm.
to two younger members of my family.
Mm-hmm.
Even down to cutting themselves, and I mean, it's really serious stuff. And the internet means that bullying doesn't stop at the end of term.
Mm-hmm.
Bullying continues all the way through the holidays.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, now we're talking about the scourge of social media, but I do think this anonymity thing is a double-edged sword because what you've also got to remember, some people are anonymous online because of the other anonymous people who will dox them,
Right.
publish their name, try and
Mm-hmm.
get their lives ruined. I mean, this is what's going on in England at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
The most horrendous bullying on the internet. I mean, it has become a complete cesspit, but unfortunately, a cesspit one has to play in if one wants to fight this fight.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You know, the sad thing is that it would be one thing if people were just saying, "I identify as this," or "This is how I want to live my life." If you want
Yeah.
to do all that, because we all did it, whatever,
Yeah.
that's fine. It's part of growing up.
Yes.
You enter into a different arena when you start talking about administering life-altering drugs
Yeah.
and operating on people,
Yep.
young people,
Yep.
and the sad thing is that there is little to no research on certain trends. For example, why is it that so many young girls are identifying as male?
Yep.
Why is it that so many of those young girls, and quite a few of the young boys as well, are on the autism spectrum? What is the connection between those two phenomena? And why is it that we can't study it? Why don't we understand it? And now you've got a situation in the UK where Tavistock is under tremendous fire, where there are, over 1,000 families who are going to come forward and start suing because they are saying that they did not give informed consent. They couldn't because they weren't given the proper information. I've seen floating all over social media for years now that the puberty blockers won't affect you permanently, that the hormones won't affect you permanently. And I knew instinctively that that couldn't be correct. It was impossible for that to be right. And when you read or you listen to the stories of the detransitioners, it is incredibly sad, not just because of what they are experiencing physically and psychologically, but because the fact that they are now under attack from other people
Yeah. Yeah.
who are accusing them of being, quislings or traitors of some
Yeah.
kind.
Yeah. I mean, it's horrendous to read some of these stories. I mean, just horrendous. Uh, you know, uh, uh, the trouble is with this sort of this affirmation the entire time is that no one is stepping back and saying, wait a second now, wait a minute. Let's look at the age. Let's look at what's going on naturally in the body at that particular time. I mean, your brain isn't even fully formed till you're 25, for goodness sake. I mean, that's another fact. I mean, and teenagers go through this the whole time, this sort of changing of thing, and influenced by medical people. For medical people to influence them in any way, shape, or form, be it by saying, no, this is why there was a trial period before where you lived as, to make sure it's not just someone telling you what to do. It's for yourself as well. It's for, and some people will know. Yes, absolutely. Some people will know, but a vast majority will not know. So it's playing a very dangerous game. And I tell you something, I think 1,000 families is the tip of the iceberg.
It is. You're right.
And I would love more people to read detransitional stories, because lives have been ruined and are continuing to be ruined. But no one seems to care. I mean, people care, obviously, but no one on the TRA side seems to sort of step back for a second and go, hang on, what is it that I'm supporting here? What is it I'm not looking at? Why are there girls who can no longer give birth? Why are there girls who are sort of mutilated for life? Why are there girls who don't have a period anymore? When they should be. Why are they so miserable? Why? What is it I'm supporting here? This constant. Everything has to be affirmation. It is not living in the real world. It's just not. And the damage it's doing. If you damage, even one child, it's one child too many.
There was a researcher at Brown University, which is my alma mater, who wrote a paper suggesting that there was an element of social contagion to this phenomenon. And Brown was besieged with criticism. Brown, of course, panicked and took the paper down. She eventually left Brown and went elsewhere. But a lot of what she had to say rings true. I mean, for those of us who have been through societal panics before, and we've seen them played out, and we've seen the damage that they can do, we recognize that there is an element to that. And the fact that social media has been a conduit for these ideas that have then spread, and a lot of young people who are still discovering themselves, discovering who they are, have latched on to this phenomenon and said, okay, well, here's a group that I can identify with. Here's a group that will accept me.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be such a big deal, just as you said before, if it was just like, okay, I'm goth, today I'm new romantic, tomorrow I'm punk, then I'm going to do heavy metal, whatever. It wouldn't be a big deal if it was just a question of a new wardrobe or changing your makeup. But when it comes down to changing your actual body permanently, that is a whole different kettle of fish.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I totally agree with you. But I mean, I also think... yes, but I feel sorry for the pressure to be a kid. I wouldn't be a kid now. I tell you, not for all the money in the world. I think the social pressure, the peer pressure, the fact that one has to conform is out of control. I mean, online, I mean, all it takes is one person to say, I don't believe you're this or that and the other, and you've got thousands of your friends turn against you. I wouldn't, just wouldn't be a kid now, and I do feel for a lot, because I think eventually they'll grow up and realize that I hear people say, today I came out as non-binary, and I can't tell you how freeing it feels on that, and Mozart as well. I'm very happy for you, but if you're trying to compare coming out as non-binary as coming out as gay, you've got things very much asked about face, because
correct.
No one has ever been kicked out of their house or disowned by their parents or punched in the face or even killed for saying I'm coming out as non-binary. The best you'd get is a sort of, well, that's nice, I hope you're happy.
Or told that
You
an
know,
illness that they contracted was God's will.
exactly,
Something like
exactly.
that, for
You
example.
know, we all remember the ghastly story of Matthew Shepherd.
Right.
Well, I don't think we, I don't think we do all remember it. We remember it. I don't think it even surfaces on most people's radars. But you know, these things are not the same. I
Hmm.
mean, I don't know whether you saw recently Microsoft's updated pride flag, because if you haven't seen it, it's worth looking up. I mean, it just looks like someone has vomited onto a white bit of paper,
Great.
and it's got everyone in there,
Hmm.
and you know, it does beg the question: well, what's the point in the flag then? What if the
Hmm.
flag's for everybody?
Hmm.
What's the point in the flag?
Right.
This is where we are. This is where we are. We had a moment on British television the other night. I don't know whether you heard about it.
Oh, of course I heard about
Oh, you
it.
did. Well, yeah.
Why don't you tell for those of us, those people who
Well,
hadn't seen it,
I
what
didn't
it
see
was?
it. I didn't see it because you know, it's not
Well, you
my
couldn't
cup of.
miss it on Twitter, though. I didn't see
No,
it
I
either,
could.
but
I saw it on Twitter, but you know, it played this really rather um, ugly, boring song about how brilliant this person was, and I'm used the word mother all the way through it,
hmm.
and then at the end, stripped naked and played the piano with his penis,
Right.
and stood there, and it went crazy. The crowd went crazy, and the press have been saying this is an iconic moment,
With her
and
penis.
and her penis, and I just looking at it thinking, my God, I mean, the bar. I mean, there used to be this thing of setting the bar low. I mean,
Hmm.
I think the bar is so low now that it's buried somewhere. Because
Hmm.
if that's an iconic moment,
Hmm.
nothing mean everything means nothing. Nothing means everything.
Hmm.
It wasn't an iconic moment. It was a bit of you know where that would have been a brilliant thing to do in the nightclubs back, you know, with the club kids back in
Right.
the 80s and the noughties in New York.
Hmm.
That's or a Divine set, you know, when
Hmm.
Divine was singing, and that's the place to do stuff like that. You know, with a group of people who go to specifically to see stuff like that. That's why we used to have clubs like that.
Hmm.
That's why you used to have clubs for BDSM. That's why you used to have clubs for all these different things that people were into. You
Hmm.
want to go and watch someone do that? Go to a club. That's where it belongs.
Hmm.
Not really on television. Honestly, I don't care who's playing it, but you know, it's the same as if a woman went to play the piano and used her breasts to play the piano. I mean,
Hmm.
there's nothing interesting or new or novel about it.
Hmm.
It's just the fact that you know, the person happened to be transgender,
Hmm.
and you know, I'm sorry, but I don't think you're not that marginalised if you can do that on
Hmm.
television and it be called the most iconic moment of the year,
Right.
celebrated in the press. And I mean, if a gay man did anything like that back in the 80s, where there was true marginalisation, there would be hell to pay.
Sure.
Hell to pay.
Sure. And I doubt that, well, I saw Jason Isaacs's response, and he was pretty harshly criticized on Twitter when he was talking exactly about this. It's
I
iconic, and
didn't.
took out her penis and played the whatever it was, and it's like we have reached a point in society. First of all, when you're saying things like her penis, something has happened. We have had a societal shift that a lot of us are still wrapping our head around.
Yeah.
And I honestly, when the Daily Mail writes a headline about her penis, I know that they're trolling. I mean, obviously, because their headlines are amazing. But when you have somebody like Jason Isaacs who is playing along and he's not trolling and he's being serious, you think to yourself, is this where we are at? Well, then again, a lot of people may have missed that the head of Stonewall, Nancy Kelly, who is a lesbian, said that if lesbians decide that they do not want to have sex with an individual who has a penis, that they are committing a kind of sexual racism.
Yeah,
Imagine a lesbian saying this to her lesbian sisters.
yeah.
What the hell is going on here?
Well, yeah, I don't think you really want to hear my opinion on Nancy Kelly. I don't think there's a. I have nothing to say about Nancy Kelly and the fact that her and her predecessor have utterly destroyed Stonewall. Utterly destroyed it. Stonewall, who I used to admire so much, and I was part of their equality shows back in the past. And this was the point, was that it was called an equality show, because what we were promised was equality. I was promised one day that I wouldn't be referred to as James Dreyfus, the gay actor. I would be referred to as James Dreyfus, an actor. And this is what we were all striving towards, was an equality. And when we got equality, which we did get, Stonewall should have concentrated on perhaps countries which throw gay people off buildings and kill and torture them. Perhaps done that instead of go the way they did, which is to accept, 47 made-up genders of how you're feeling in the morning, whether you might have sex in the afternoon or you're a bit sleepy, till 4 o'clock, and then you might have sex, but there's a name for that. It's just madness. Ruth Hunt and Nancy Kelly, I have nothing good to say about them at all.
Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned that about other countries, because there are very, very few. I can't think of any of the prominent gay groups that have taken a strong stance on any of that recently.
Well,
and
I'll show you.
Okay.
Show you. One has.
Are you going to say the LGB Alliance?
Well, I was going to read out.
Oh, very good.
Their achievements. They have been working in Uganda. Here it is. Campaigned against the conversion therapy girl to highlight dangers it presents to vulnerable children and young people. They have given evidence to the Gender Recognition Reform Bill opposing the bill. Received a grant from the National Lottery Community Fund to scope a helpline for young gay and lesbian people. Sponsored Uganda Pride.
Oh, wonderful.
To provide vital support for people who are criminalized for their orientation. Launched a campaign, Gay Teens Aren't Sick. I mean, welcomed allied groups in countries including Poland, Australia, the US, Canada, and New Zealand, and encouraged them in their work. So they have been working. Uganda is where they're primarily working, because let's remember that the UK branch of the LGBT Alliance is 3 women and 1 man. Yes, this huge hate group, who I know personally, and there's nothing hateful about these people, believe me. One was the original members of Gay Lib, one worked for Stonewall, one is a filmmaker. They're all advocates for lesbian, gay, and bisexual rights. They're the only charity left in this country that's only specifically caters for them, because we've lost every single other one. There are plenty of trans-only charities, but apparently we're not allowed our own.
Yeah, and a lot of this ideology has co-opted groups that have been around for decades and have worked so honorably, taking such unpopular positions. And now you have groups like the American Civil Liberties Union, who have gotten involved in this argument, fighting against the interests and the rights of women in the United States, advocating for putting male predators in female prisons, pushing to allow young male-bodied individuals to compete in women's sports. And when people say, well, what difference does it make? Because advocating for the rights of this particular group doesn't take away the rights of anyone else. Well, yes, it in fact does, because if you allow young male-bodied individuals to compete in women's sports, where are women supposed to compete? They can't compete in men's sports.
Yeah.
So, yes, you are taking away scholarships from women.
Yes.
You are taking away a place. And when I don't know how it is in the UK, but here in the United States, college sports is very, very big business. And you are taking away opportunities for young women to be spotted by scouts, to get sponsorship deals, I mean, when you have a young man who is beating a woman who won a silver medal at the Olympics, and he wasn't even trying that hard. You know that there is a serious problem when you have
Yeah.
men being nominated for Women of the Year awards. There is a problem. There
Yeah.
is a problem, and you don't have to be a radical feminist like your fiancée Julie Bindel. To,
I was. She turned me down. She's
she
not even like.
did. The
She
nerve
turned
of
me
some
down.
people. You know what's funny, James, is that a year ago when I came out in defense of Julie, who has been a Facebook friend of mine for quite some time, when I came out in defense of her, I was brutalized on Twitter for
Yeah, I'm
that and
sure.
called any number of names. Now, if I come out and I mention Julie's name, I don't get that reaction anymore. Not really. I mean, a couple of people will come forward and say what they have to say, but it's not like before where I've got
Yeah.
dozens, if not hundreds of people coming after me.
Yeah.
Because Julie hasn't said anything, in my opinion, Julie has not said anything that is so around the bend and so radical that it can't be understood
Yeah.
by a wider public.
Yeah. And also, people have to. Yes, you're absolutely right. But and also one has to remember that she's got a wealth of history behind her and a wealth
Mm-hmm.
of writing behind her.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, if you want to understand anyone, you don't judge them on one article, or you don't judge them on one thing that they write. You have to understand where the other end of the snake ends. You
Mm-hmm.
have to know the whole spine. You've got to understand how the vertebrae move. So with Julie Bindel, like Germaine Greer, there's a history and a path to what they write. So
Mm-hmm.
to react to one article that you might disagree with, well, you have to go back and retrace the steps. I mean, nobody really does the research anymore, and
Mm-hmm.
where you do try and do the research, you get a lot of misinformation on the way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know how kids do any work nowadays, because where would you go to find out
Mm-hmm.
facts? Where would you go? I mean, corporate. No one can be. I find that my trust in everything has been eroded, because
Mm-hmm.
I go to one place and I see lesbian and gay history being rewritten.
Mm-hmm.
The one man who was there, Fred Sargent, getting
Right.
punched to the floor
Mm-hmm.
by a Q thug.
And by there, James is referring to Stonewall, the actual event of Stonewall.
The actual riots. That's the beginning. And Fred Sargent was there. And of course, he seems to be the last place that anyone goes to get facts.
Right.
People ride roughshod over him. And he's actually, sorry, I was there. No, they don't seem to be, especially LGBT groups,
Mm-hmm.
advocacy groups. I mean, this whole thing is a mess. I tell you, it's a real mess.
Well, that was the other thing. I know that Clive and Dennis early on were extremely, extremely angry that history was being rewritten, and a lot of it started, or the most noticeable rewriting of history had to do with Stonewall, and this lie that it was someone transgender who threw the first stone, that Marsha P. Johnson was transgender. No, she was not. She was a drag queen.
You can see it on video. She says, "I'm a boy. I'm a boy."
Exactly. Yes, exactly. And that this is a very dangerous phenomenon. Any rewriting of history is a very
Excuse me.
dangerous phenomenon. And it's not
Getting over a cold.
it's not a victimless situation. Learning history incorrectly is a real problem.
Yeah.
And we don't rewrite history to make somebody feel better or
No.
to we don't alter the facts that way. Then we're getting into the world of George Orwell. And
Yeah.
as a matter of fact, when you talked about your name being removed from the CD or the credits of Doctor Who, it reminded me of Winston Smith. I thought this is exactly what Winston Smith did for a living.
Absolutely, absolutely. New speak, cutting it out,
Right,
putting it in the little the little fire furnace, and it's gone
right,
forever. Exactly the
right.
same.
I was getting really hopeful at the beginning of the year that more and more people were having these conversations, and I am hopeful now. I mean, when Sajid Javid said that he was going to start an investigation of the clinics, I thought this is really, really good news because it's not just the detransitioners that people should be following and listening to their stories, which you can write them off and say, well, these are anecdotal stories. I mean, these are just individuals. What people really need to do, they need to listen to what the whistleblowers have said.
Yes, that's very true.
The psychiatrist who came out and spoke out about the practices at places like Tavistock and these other clinics, how little counseling, if any, is offered to these kids before they are prescribed drugs,
Yes.
and how they are rushed through the system and their word is taken at face value. And I'm not saying you just dismiss them out of hand, but what I am saying is that there needs to be time to allow these kids to explore why
Yes.
it is that they are taking the position that they're taking. And
Yes.
whether or not there can be an alternative. You mentioned cutting in your family. I have heard one theory that for a lot of these kids, for the women, the girls especially, that this is the new type of cutting. And
Yeah.
I've seen pictures of girls who have shown what their body looks like after getting the top surgery. And you can see that their bodies, their arms, other parts of their bodies are covered in scars from cutting. And
Yeah.
you think to yourself, why would a doctor be complicit in engaging in the ultimate form of cutting, which is removing the healthy breasts of a young woman?
Yeah.
It is an astonishing level of medical malpractice,
Yeah.
potentially.
It really is. I mean, it really is. And unfortunately, sadly, it was seen to have to. I thought this might have been nipped in the bud, as you said, but sadly it looks like it's all going to be done through the courts. Through
Right.
but the damage is already done, as you say. I mean, you know, and but the point is yes, it might work for some who do have gender dysphoria. No one is
Sure.
disputing that.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
it's the lack of due process, the lack of safeguarding. Safeguarding, where's that gone? Where has safeguarding gone? And nobody. They seem to sort of be dispensable. These kids to some of these medical people. Especially in America where you pay for.
Right.
Pay for it, which you don't over here. You can get it done for free. You might have to wait a long time, and again, that's some people have said, well, that's transphobic to make me wait, and it's like, for goodness sake, you've got people on the cusp of death with cancer,
Right.
or some other dreadful disease. Let's get things in perspective a bit. And the thing about the whistleblowers is, don't wait for them. Don't think, well, if it's so important, it'll be on the news. It won't. The media
No, it won't.
are entirely complicit in this.
Correct.
In silencing this. If you want to find out what the whistleblowers say, don't wait for the media. Do your research. Find out who they are, what their names are. Go straight to the source. Ask them yourselves if you can, through the power of social media. But for some reason, the media is totally complicit in this entire mess.
It's fear. It's fear.
Yeah, I suppose it is fear, but how long? It'll take one thing before one thing will happen, and I'm not sure it's going to be a good thing. One thing will happen that will probably end this fear and complicit behaviour overnight, and I don't think it'll be a good thing at all. And I don't know. I just don't see this ending in any positive way at all. I think we will eventually come out of it. I do think we'll move on. But we're in very strange, odd times at the moment. Everyone's been under a 2-year lockdown.
Right.
There's a horrible wars going on. There's a threat of nuclear. Everyone is feeling very edgy at the moment and extra angry, and I'm sure that's not helping the situation either. But that's why this is so important. It mustn't get lost in the conversation, what we're talking about now.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, nobody is suggesting that we go back to the bad old days where, in the United States, I think that there may have been 3 hospitals where you could go to get the procedure done, and it would take a very, very long time, and a lot of people resorted to flying to Thailand to get the procedure done.
Sure.
But the pendulum has swung the other way to such an extreme that now medical malpractice potentially is being excused as compassion, and that is a really, really frightening thing. And what's happened in the UK is so extraordinary because usually it's the United States that goes hog wild and goes a little bit crazy and takes things to an extreme. But it happened in the UK, and now it's swinging back also quite quickly. And I think part of that, honestly, is the fact that you do have the National Health Service, and because of that, you have a larger number of people who have a stake in the way that healthcare is administered and distributed. And the fact that, as you mentioned, there are people with cancer, there are women with breast cancer, there are women and men who are waiting for surgery. And now you've got a bunch of kids who are demanding the time of doctors, who are demanding operating theaters, who are demanding nurses and care. And the resources are not infinite.
Yeah.
That may be part of it. I think that that's one of the reasons, but also because you guys, the legislation that was passed so quickly. I mean, when you think about how long it took to get gay marriage legalized.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you look at the way that the transgender movement has pushed the ball forward so quickly that nobody had a chance to stay back. Nobody wanted to be accused of being a bigot.
Yeah.
And so it happened so fast that there was no time to really contemplate what it was that they were voting on, what it was that people were advocating. I mean, if you couch it in the language of, well, we're being kind to a minority of people, then you're like, well, that's a winning slogan. That makes sense. Nobody wants to be unkind.
Absolutely.
But
well, this whole be kind thing has kind of been the mask has come off, because I found that everyone with be kind written in their let's say their Twitter bios are the least kind people in the world. I mean,
right.
it's you can almost guarantee every single time there would be this be kind slogan, because this isn't ultimately being kind. This is not ultimately being kind. Ultimately, this is doing a hell of a lot of damage. And if you're just going to affirm everything without even asking questions, that is a lack of safeguard, especially if you're talking medically. I mean, would you just go randomly into the street and say, anyone available tonight to look after my kid? I'm going to the movies. Anyone around? Yeah, I'll do it. Okay. Would you ask that person any questions? I mean, would you make that person feel bad by saying, listen, I kind of need some proof that you've looked after kids before and you're responsible, and I feel a bit bad asking you, so I won't ask you. You just go in there. I'll be back around 11 o'clock. Go and take it. It's that. I mean, this is an equivalence, but it's not a false equivalence. It's. Are we to assume why are there prisons? Why do they exist? Because some people will lie, some people will cheat, some people will steal, some people will be dishonest, some people will rape, some people will murder. Where's the safeguarding gone? We do ask these questions of everyone, not just because you're transgender or gay or whatever. You ask these questions of everyone. You make sure that people are protected, the vulnerable, the young. And it seems to me that safeguarding has gone way, way down on the list. Are we doing the best for this child? Instead of just saying, yes, yes, we'll do what you want, and patting them on the head, you should be saying, now, wait a minute. Parents, come back in the room. You're involved in this. Sit down. We've got to talk about this. This young person's too young to get a tattoo. This young person's too young to have a drink. This young person is too young to drive. What are we doing? Are you saying just chop off healthy bits, parents? Is that what you're saying? This conversation is not happening. And that's the terrifying thing about it. That's the scary. But what I am seeing at the moment is, especially over coming from your side of the pond, is a lot of school meetings, which they video, which is great, and a lot of parents holding these school boards accountable, saying, what are you doing? Because a lot of things I'm reading, things are being done behind the parents' back.
Yes, that's true.
That would, God, if there's something that's going to get people together, it's doing things behind people's back, because it's the silent majority that would eventually end this.
Right. And it's funny because I've had many, many conversations with my boyfriend and with people in my life who are my age or, within the age range. And one of the things that we find astonishing about these young teachers who are uploading these TikToks about how they try to open the minds of their very young students, I mean like kindergarten age, really, really young kids, as to being open-minded and their lifestyle and all that. And we've all said we never had a single instance of a teacher standing up in front of a classroom and telling us about their sex life or their personal life. Not a single instance of this. And honestly, call me an old fogey as much as you want. I prefer that. I don't want to know. The thought of my teacher being sexually active was cringy. I mean, when I was in junior high school, one of my teachers married the parent of one of my friends, and the thought of it was enough to send us all into a conniption fit.
Yeah.
Just the thought of a teacher having a personal life of any kind was incomprehensible.
Yeah, it's so true. But it was also slightly scary about those videos is they go, now the parents don't know this, but I found a special way to, as if she's sort of telling a secret to some, and you're thinking, you didn't know we can see you saying this. Why? And one today, one of my the kids I teach didn't validate me, and I had to explain. I said, "What are you getting children to validate you for?" But you see,
it's not funny, but it's terrible.
But you see this every day.
Right.
There's a sort of rage in these teachers' eyes. There's this smile and this rage in the eyes, and you think, you're very angry about something. Should you be near children at all? I don't know. Scary times.
Right. And there is going to be a backlash, and there is a backlash, and the language is going to be extremely harsh.
Yep.
Because parents do not like to be lied to about what is going on in the classroom. And if it's anything except teaching in the classroom, and by teaching I mean the actual subject matter that these teachers are being hired to teach, then parents are going to be very angry. And there are certain regions of the country where this kind of thing does not fly, and it will never fly, ever. It will never be okay. And there will not be a teachers union that will be able to protect you once the parents and the school boards, and this is the thing, in the 80s, the school boards in the United States were being co-opted by the Christian right.
Yes.
And the Christian right was not having a lot of luck getting their people elected to higher office in large numbers. I mean, yes, there was sympathy and that kind of thing, but in terms of getting one of theirs actually elected into like the presidency or the vice presidency or that, there was sympathy, but it was largely, there was sympathy, but not like a Jerry Falwell type being elected president. And one of my bosses at ABC News said, well, they haven't had a lot of luck with it. They've just managed to get on the school boards. And I said, right, but at the school board level, the amount of damage that these people can do is immeasurable.
Yeah.
But now we have seen the pendulum swing the other way, and you see these school boards that are now being berated by these parents for being secretive about
Yeah.
what it is that is being taught in the classroom. And whether it comes from the left or from the right, the lack of
Yeah.
transparency is really, really, really disturbing.
Yeah, it is disturbing. It's very disturbing, and you can see how disturbing it is just by watching how disturbed these parents are.
Mm-hmm.
And we spent years getting rid of this ghastly idea that gay people and trans people are a thing of predators and
Right.
pedophiles. We spent years
Right.
getting rid of that. Now, just by having a few of these teachers go, by the way, I snuck some activism into my thing. That brings this whole conversation round again. And it brings it right back to people saying, see, told you so.
Mm-hmm.
These people can't be trusted with our children. And that will be the
Right.
backlash.
Right.
That will be the backlash.
Right.
Cheesy, gender critical people will, of course, receive the blame from these people, obviously, because that's what's going to happen. But actually, in practice, they've done it to themselves.
Well, as you well know, because you're old enough to remember this and old enough to know this, there have been a number of occasions where these pro-pedophile groups have tried to infiltrate the gay community and tried to sort of force their way under that umbrella, onto that flag,
Yeah.
and have been rejected quite strongly. And we are now entering a period where you see a lot of testing of the waters,
Yeah.
where you see academics. It always comes from academia,
Academics, yeah, academia.
who are coming out and insisting that it is just another lifestyle choice. It's another sexual preference, and that we shouldn't be so judgmental. We should be more open-minded. We should be more accepting. And what's scary is that there is such a thing as being so open-minded that your brains fall out.
Yeah.
And so far, I do not have, except for LGB Alliance, which is a heroic group fighting fighting against tremendous opposition for reasons that I still do not comprehend. But you see that a lot of these groups are, I'm not saying that they're warming up to the idea, because there's no evidence of that, but what I am seeing is that they are so willing to be so accepting that it is possible that, NAMBLA is not a thing anymore as far as I know, but NAMBLA was the example that I remember from the 70s and the 80s.
We had Pi.
Yes, exactly, yes. And
Pedophile
now,
information exchange.
that's right, that now it is possible that you're going to have people saying, and that is a door that should never, ever, ever,
Well,
under any circumstances, be opened.
But you see, that's already happened by changing the word paedophile to minor attracted person.
Oh, MAP, yes.
It's already a little step in that direction, isn't it? Otherwise, why would you try and soften the word paedophile? Why? Well, for what reason?
Right.
Minor attracted people? Minor. I've read some bios on Twitter of people, who actually put in their bios what ages they're attracted to, between 5 and 9.
Really? I've never seen that. That's horrible.
Oh, I've seen it. There's a MAP community existing on Twitter.
Oh, well, yeah, okay.
I don't see these accounts being taken down. But you write down a woman is a woman, you're gone. You're gone
Right.
forever. No, of course it's not we're into really, 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 really bad waters at the moment. If this particular thing rears its head, and especially if it, in the name of be kind. Oh yes, but I've read these arguments by people who are saying yes, but men might have these thoughts, but if they never act on it, what's the problem?
Exactly. Yes, they're making a distinction between those who have the inclination and those who actually go out and offend.
Well, so would you? I wondered if you do the same with a man who was a potential serial killer,
Right?
And who manages not to do it for a while. Yes, but he's never killed anyone. Yes, but you see the sort of issue here? Just the
Right.
fact that, if the desire to rape is there,
Mm-hmm.
then you'd go and this is where you have to get into. This is why safeguarding is important.
Mm-hmm.
This is exactly why safeguarding is such an issue.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the fact that everyone will go and do it. But one ought to know about these things. How quite that would be done, I do not know. But I do not think acceptance or adding MAP to the already
Mm-hmm.
incredibly busy alphabet
Mm-hmm.
is anything that people are going to stand for,
Mm-hmm.
especially gays and lesbians of my generation.
Mm-hmm. So, since you've been so outspoken, do you see that you're sort of taking a very strong stance on this issue? Has it hurt you professionally, or have you found that another door has opened?
No, I think it's hurt of course it's hurt me professionally. But then I say to myself, well, do I really want to be part of a profession now where, every time you go in the mornings and rehearse something, you sit in a pronoun circle, and I think to myself, so I'm not interested. So, when the acting community gets back to its senses,
Mm-hmm.
and we actually get something that challenges and makes people think, because
Mm-hmm.
everything is just basically the same at the moment. It's every show is a carbon copy of another one. So I don't really feel like I'm missing out on too much. I'll just go and do something else for a while.
Do you think that gay roles should be played by gay actors?
No, not
Okay.
at all. No. What if you're a young gay actor, but you don't want to be out? You're not ready to be out,
Mm-hmm.
and you want a role, and it's a gay role. You're outed immediately. We used to have to call this thing called being outed.
Right.
You're outed immediately. If you're put up for a gay role, you're outed immediately. Straight people can play gay roles just as well as I could play a straight role.
Mm-hmm.
I think
And
I
vice
did
versa,
I
of
did
course.
a film with Colin Firth and Stanley Tucci called Supernova.
Mm-hmm.
And they played lovers and had been together for years.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what acting's all about. They're such
Mm-hmm.
good actors; they convince you. They were authentic and brilliant. So
Mm-hmm.
no, I don't think that's at all.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and you see certainly. I remember one Royal Shakespeare Company production of Romeo and Juliet where Ian McKellen played Romeo, and not only is he gay, but he was also a bit long in the tooth to be playing that role at the time. And I don't think that anybody had any objection because it's Ian McKellen. Who cares? You know.
Yes, yes,
I mean,
quite.
he's incredible. And
Yes,
so
he is
what if he's
incredible.
40 and Juliet is 15? It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know that that's been a point of contention for a very long. Well, it's been a point of contention recently. Why, for example, was Jared Leto cast in the Dallas Buyers Club, and why did he win an Oscar for playing a gay role? I don't know what you think about that.
Oh, I think if you're a good enough actor and you give a good enough performance, good on him. I mean, I don't believe in any of this gay roles or any for gay people. No, I don't believe in that. I think acting is acting. That's what you study for years to see. I mean, Neil Patrick Harris played straight men on How I
Right.
Met Your Mother. Played straight man in Gone Girl.
Mm-hmm.
Convinced me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really know, and also there must be loads of gay actors we don't know of playing straight roles, and possibly straight actors gay actors who might be straight doing
Right.
vice versa.
What do you think? What do you think about the recent kerfuffle over the Globe Theatre mounting a production of Joan of Arc and making Joan of Arc non-binary or transgender or whatever the decision is?
Ridiculous, but
Yeah.
there we go. I mean, I wouldn't go and see it.
Me neither.
I'm sure some people would go and have conniptions over it. Personally, it would bore me to tears. But Joan of Arc was a woman. She was burned at the stake. She wrote things. She wasn't non-binary. This is just made up 2022 nonsense. You can explore it if you want to. I mean, I'm not saying you can't do it. You can't. I'm saying do it. That's absolutely fine. I'm sure some people will find it interesting. Just not me.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that I am very, very glad that the LGB Alliance exists. I'm glad that they're fighting against all the incredibly unfair attacks that are being leveled at it. Why? I mean, look, I find it hard to accept that having one organization that is LGB without the T is so damaging. Well, it is damaging to these activists. I understand that, but the activists are not the sum total of the community. Just as you mentioned earlier, and I fully agree, and my gay friends will all say the same thing. My gay friends of a certain age, we grew up around people who were transgender, and it was never this way. It wasn't like this. But then again, the people that we knew as young people who were transgender. They were not heterosexual men. They were actually, all of them had been born gay men who felt that they were in the wrong body, that a mistake had been made somewhere along the line, and were living very, very happily as trans women.
And proudly.
Correct. And called themselves trans women. I never until
Proudly.
recent times ran into anyone who was transgender who claimed that she was actually a woman, a biological woman. This is a new phenomenon.
This is very new.
And it's not just a matter of changing the language. This has profound societal implications. And you don't see it that way when it comes to female to male. You don't see the same phenomenon. No. You don't see F to M's demanding to be allowed in male spaces, or demanding to be locked up in men's prisons, or demanding to compete on men's sports teams. You don't see that, and you see that there is a completely different attitude towards the way that they live their lives. And that is a reality. We can all see it with our own two eyes.
Yeah, well, that's a very interesting point. I mean, I think the only thing you have to do about that is think to yourself, now why would that be?
Correct. Yeah. It was a point that came up when I talked to Buck Angel, and I asked him.
I was just going to say.
I asked him, do you think that it's because of socialization? And he said, absolutely. He was raised as a woman. He grew up as a woman. His transition did not occur until much later, and I also see this in the F to M's who transition later in life. They were socialized in such a way that type of behavior is not accepted. It is unnatural to them. It goes against the way that they think. And so you wouldn't see, for example, an F to M bursting into a meeting, a support group for survivors of prostate cancer, and demanding to get equal time. You wouldn't see that kind of thing.
No. And again, I posit the question, why would that be?
Mm-hmm. And why is it that we are...
I think the answer is simple, but I'm just going to leave why is that the case?
And why is it that we're so eager to redefine woman, the word woman, but not man? Exactly. You don't see the same emphasis.
No, you don't. I mean, going back to when you were talking about, all the transsexuals that we knew in the past, who were proudly transgender, proudly. They used to tell everyone. I mean, you couldn't stop them telling people sometimes, and in a meeting in the clubs, and it was, it was a very, very different era, and I don't know what's gone wrong. Anyway, I need to grab something to eat or something.
You do so.
because it's lunchtime.
You have been so generous with your time, James. Thank you so, so much, and keep up the good work. I love
Thanks.
your Twitter feed is my favorite. Your Twitter feed is the only reason I stay on that godforsaken app.
It is.
Um,
It really is godforsaken. It really is. Um, but listen, because all you guys keep me going as well, because it's got a great side to it. When you're feeling a bit low or something, and you say, I'm
right.
feeling a bit, you'll get lots of messages saying, keep going, blah blah blah. So it's got a double-edged side to it. But
Correct.
I've really enjoyed talking to you.
Likewise.
And I only hope that our reasonable conversation here is not going to be hijacked, and we probably will be called bigots for even discussing this.
Sure.
But I thoroughly enjoyed talking with you.
Thank you, James. Thank you so much for agreeing to be here. And thanks again. And keep up the good work. You're amazing.
Oh, bless you. You take care. Lots of love to you.
See you later, love.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks, guys. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. And come back soon. Information on membership is in the description box. Please do consider liking, sharing, and subscribing. And I will see you the next time. Bye-bye.